5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Hey everybody, you are tuned into Uptown with Mona, your go-to show for everything poetry, hip-hop, and entertainment. I'm your host, Mona Baudet, and we've got a dope show for you today, so sit back, relax, and let's get this party started right. How you doing, everybody? What is going on? Look, I'm here alone today, meaning I ain't got my girl Tamika in the background, so we're gonna work this shit out today. Today's my first time by myself, so I'm feeling a little nervous. So you just gotta work with me, laugh at me if you have to, whatever. We just gonna have fun tonight. I got the dopest poet coming up tonight, but hold on, let me say what I need to say for my intro. Okay, so. Okay, Uptown. Welcome to Uptown with Mona. We meet every Monday at 7 p.m. on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. And again, Thursday at 6 p.m. on withoutwarningradio.com. It's spelled without warning. On Without Warning Radio. Please go to Uptown with Mona on Instagram. I need you to join my Instagram page. It's pronounced uptown.with.mona on Instagram. If you'd like to donate to Uptown with Mona, my Cash App is Uptown with Mona with the money sign. If you have an interesting story and you want to be interviewed, you can hit me up on uptownwithmona@gmail.com. Also, December 16th, 2024 at Comedy in Harlem on 147th Street and St. Nicholas Avenue at 7 p.m. The Naughty List, a Mocha Lounge reunion. And if you're from Harlem and you know about the Mocha Lounge and all the erotic poetry we did that at Mocha Lounge, yeah, you know we're gonna have a lot of fun. We're gonna be cutting up. So come join us for that. It's a sultry night of erotic poetry, and we're gonna have a good time. So now, let me get to the meat and potatoes of this show, right? I am going to bring in this dopest poet. His name is Chamber 7. I'm going to pull him in right now. Here we go. And Mr. Chamber 7, what is going on? My Demi, how are you? How you doing?
What's going on? What's happening? What's happening?
Yeah, man. I am very happy. And I'm happy to see you here. I'm real happy.
Thank you.
You get a standing ovation.
That's tonight, all right.
Right? How about that?
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So thank you again for coming on the show and hanging out with me for a little while. I'm going to ask you 16 questions. We call it 16 bars. And, it's we do what we do.
All right. I like it.
Yeah. So I'm going to start by asking you. We're going to start asking. First of all, I like to ask my guest this question: how was your day? How you feeling?
My day was decent. Feeling pretty good today.
Yeah,
feeling pretty good. Yeah.
Okay. Nothing exciting. Nothing spectacular. No
not today.
No $1 million win. You just
Oh nah. Not yet.
Yeah. And what do you do?
Right now, I'm a manufacturing engineer for a company out in McDonough, Georgia.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And you like it. So you in Georgia. It's nice out there.
Yeah. It's not too bad. I like the area because there's so much to do here.
Right.
Aside from the economy and some things going on, that's the only thing that's kind of slowing me down from doing too much. You know what I mean? So
I got you.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get to these questions. We
take
our time and we just gonna have fun. Get to know each other, it's like a first date. It's like we're on the first date. We got to get to know each other. You know what I'm saying?
I like that.
Right. First question: what inspired you to start writing poetry, and how has your background influenced your work?
Oh, good. That's a good double question. My poetry was actually inspired by my mother. She saw that I had a lot of creativity, and she always wanted me to write these stories down. So one day she said, I'm gonna give you something to put all that stuff in. And she brought home, you ever go to the Dollar General and you see those empty books? It's just a nice bounded book.
It's
and it
like
just
a journal
yeah,
or
exactly.
empty,
So
yeah, for you to write. Yeah, I got like a
right,
diary. Mm-hmm.
right, like a diary.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she brought me one home, but it was pink, and I was like, "What am I supposed to do with this?" And she
Mm-hmm.
was like, "Just write stuff in it." And I was like, "I'm not finna walk around with no pink journal in my hand." But next thing you know, one thing led to another. I jotted a couple words down in it, and then it just kind of spawned from there. And then I just kept writing in it and just kept going. I didn't step on a stage until I was probably like I want to say 26, 27.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even know there was such a thing as spoken word. A friend of mine took me to an open mic, and I had this one piece that I wrote over and over again so much that I had it memorized. So that's what I stepped on stage with. And I feel like my background as an engineer, I've always liked to construct or take things apart and put them together.
Okay.
So when it comes to my poetry, anybody who's listened to my poetry before, it feels very conversational. So it sounds like a conversation that just kind of rhymes. And
Mm-hmm.
I do that on purpose to try to grab you in and pull you into it. And then I start with a very simple idea and I build on that. So
Okay.
that's what it feels like when I'm doing my poetry too. So
Do you remember your very first poem? Do you know a couple of lines? Can you, remember a few lines?
the very, very first one, no, it
Mm-hmm.
was bad too. I'm not gonna lie. Now, if you asked me about my very first spoken word piece, I do remember. It was a sliver. It was actually about my parents.
Mm-hmm.
It's much too obvious to deny. It only takes a moment to notice when your palms begin to sweat and there's a feeling of unrest that culminates into a stir of emotion. It's belittled by the notion of just being a strong physical attraction or the unnerving reaction to the turmoil of one's chemical imbalance. Because you see the joining of two people in open view that started off as just a glance and became a simple dance and is now a budding romance going on nearly 30 years strong, can't be confused with anything other than love.
Wow. Wow, that's dope. About love.
Yeah.
I can't even remember my first poem. I don't even, I want to laugh and say it was the roses are red, violets are blue poem, but I really don't remember my first piece. I can remember the first time I spit had to be like 2009.
Yeah. Okay.
I was me and my homegirl of mine. She was a poet, and I was like, shit, we should start a open mic.
Collective.
And
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
was like, she was like, all right, whatever. And I was like, cool, let's do it. So we started and we called it Microphone Fiends. I don't know if you heard about Mic Fiends in New
Oh
York
yeah.
City.
Yeah. Yeah.
Microphone Fiends. That's my open mic. We started my
Right.
open mic then. That was back in 2009 or 2010. And that
Right.
I spit my very first poem that day. Nerve
Okay.
fuck. It was was spitting about house music because I'm a house music artist.
All
So I
right.
was spitting about house music. Maybe I'll spit it later. I don't know.
Okay. Okay.
I want to get to know you right now. Let's get
I
to this
feel you.
next question, okay?
All right.
And the next question is, can you describe your experience in the Navy and how it impacted your creative expression?
Oh, my experience in the Navy was both positive. It had its positives and it had its negatives. It was
Okay.
primarily it opened my eyes to a whole other side of things. I think one of
Mm-hmm.
the biggest influences that the Navy had on me was when it took me to other countries.
Okay.
I was actually a part of the crew of Navy that went overseas before 9/11. Like I
Mm-hmm.
was out to sea when 9/11 happened.
Wow.
So before that, we had hit like 16 ports, and we didn't have that many issues getting
Uh-huh.
in and out of ports and stuff like that. So
Okay.
you see the slight differences in cultures and how people do things and the way they do things. And I think that opened my eyes to we are so saturated, especially here in the United States, with the idea that the way we do it is the only way to do it. When in reality,
Okay.
there's hundreds and thousands of different ways to do it. The only reason you feel like it's the only way to do it is because that's all you've ever known.
Right.
So I try to approach my poetry from several different facets, and I always tell myself, yeah, but what if somebody saw it this way? And it helps me to not make assumptions, but it
Mhm.
also helps to play on people's assumptions when I catch them in my poetry, so to speak.
Okay. Okay. Do you spit erotic poetry at all?
Yes, yes, I do.
Okay, we're gonna get to that. Good. I really want to hear some of that because I'm an erotic poet, and
Okay,
so I love erotic poetry in any
Hmm.
form, any fashion. You
All
know.
right. All
Okay.
right.
Next question. How does your time as a model affect your perception of beauty and self-image in your poetry?
Ah, great stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my time as a model showed me that beauty is truly in the eye of the beholder. I think there's a lot of times that people have these unrealistic beauty standards. Just being in the model industry is, it
Mm-hmm.
can be, it depends upon who you have the blessing of working with, because it
Right,
can tear down your self-esteem very rapidly if you let it.
right.
My self-confidence was not that great for a long time until I actually found myself in a Muay Thai gym. And the guys would ask me, they would say, "Hey, are you a fighter?" And I was like, "Nah, I'm mostly an amateur. I'm just starting off." And they were like, "Nah, but you built like us."
Right.
And that did wonders for my confidence, because for the longest time, you look at yourself through a particular lens for so long and assume you're supposed to look like this group of people, when in reality you belong with this group of people. And
Right.
that helped me tremendously. And as far as like my self-image for my poetry,
Mm-hmm.
I see myself in poetry as just being, one of the greats. I recognize that my work might not be the same as everybody else's, but I consider myself as one of the greats because my art is accepted by somebody who needed it at the time that they needed it. So though
Yes.
I might not be, hailed on thousands of stages and get paid millions of dollars for it, and I don't have big crowds, that's not, sometimes that's not what I'm going for. I'm just primarily going for getting the attention of the one guy or the one girl or the one couple or the one parent that needed to hear what I had to say at that moment in time.
Mm. Mm-hmm. That's dope. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I feel the same way. I feel like because I'm an erotic poet, I
Yeah.
am there to say what she can't say,
Right.
or is afraid to
Right.
say, or is
Right.
embarrassed to say,
Exactly.
you
Exactly.
know, to give you that kind of I want to say confidence. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's the right word.
Absolutely.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it wasn't like that for me in the beginning. It was kidding me. My very first poem, I swear, I turned red. My face got red. My ears got hot, and
Yeah.
I started spitting the poem. And this
Yeah.
guy, he came and he sat at my feet and held my leg, and I was like, "Oh my God!" He said, "No, Mona, keep spitting."
Keep
And I
spitting.
just kept
Yeah.
spitting the poem, and I
Yeah.
stopped and I covered my face. They're like, "No, keep spitting."
Yeah.
And these
Yeah.
are all poets that were they were younger than me, but they were more experienced than me in the poetry world, even if it was a few months than myself. But it was
Right.
real dope. And I was like, I kind of like this.
Right. Right. Right.
I call myself a dirty old broad who does erotic poetry, and I am all right with that.
All right with that. I feel
You know
that. I
what I'm
feel that.
saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
man. All right, here we go. Number 4. Are there specific themes or messages you aim to convey in your poems? It's a good question.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I love challenging assumption.
Okay. Explain.
Period. Um, the idea that love only looks one way. The idea that, oh, only this certain group of people feel this way about something. The Even back to the previous question as to what beauty standards look like,
Right.
there are some group of people that are very beautiful to me that might not necessarily be beautiful to other people. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Right.
The ideology that, certain injustices are okay when it's done to this group of people, but they're not okay when it's done to this group of people. That
Right.
kind of stuff is those are the assumptions I love to challenge by just putting out uh, a different version of the story to help
Mm-hmm.
you see it from a different side than you would normally see it. So almost like, because my favorite genre movie, of course, will always be like a suspense thriller or something like that. So that's what I try to kind of incorporate into my poetry oftentimes,
Okay.
and say something that might be a little bit different. Like a perfect example, I wrote a resignation letter poem
Mm-hmm.
from the standpoint of being in an abusive relationship.
Okay.
So I wrote it to say, if I was in an abusive relationship, of course you would tell me to leave. But when it comes to a job, that relationship that I have with that job for the paycheck that I get was abusive, but everybody's like, no, you need to stay for that. And it's like, why would I do that? You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's one of the kind of the ideologies I try to steer around in my poetry.
Okay. I see. Breakup poem. I wrote a breakup poem for somebody and
Mm-hmm.
gave it to him. And he looked at it and he started laughing. He said, "You know what? You are so fucked up." I'm like, "I know, right? But you gotta
Yeah.
go, bro. I'm done with
Yeah.
you. I'm over it." It's
Exactly.
like, peace,
Exactly. Yeah.
peace, bro. Get your
And
shit and get
sometimes that's the
out.
best way to get all that energy out. You know what I'm saying? Is
Mhm.
to encapsulate it into a piece that's, never ending and they get it,
Right.
So
And it was no arguing. It was kind of funny. We both
yeah.
laughed about it. We still cool today, and it was
Yeah.
cool. It was good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Number 5. Here come my roommate is meowing here. My cat was meowing. All right, number 5. What role does this wait a minute. What role does discipline learned from your military background play in your writing process?
Um, Oddly enough, the discipline that I have in my writing process wasn't necessarily built in the military, but it was definitely solidified in the
Got it.
military.
Got it.
Um, I will take it bit by bit, piece by piece. I will start with a concept. I'll
Mm-hmm.
jot that concept down, and then over time, I'll build on that concept. Well, what is it I'm trying to say? Well, what do I want it to look like? What is the future state? And then I guess you could say I hone in on or attack it from a very, I don't want to say manipulative or deceptive, but like a roundabout way, getting you to the point without allowing you the opportunity to assume what you think I'm talking about.
Mm.
So that's primarily what I prefer to do. I prefer to take pieces and write them in such a way that it still gets you to that particular place. And the one major discipline that I have is I always make sure I stay within that 3 to 5 minute range 90% of the time. I don't try to get it too long, because when it's too long, I feel like you lose the audience. You
Right.
don't get the same flavor for it. So it's just long enough that I get the meat of what I'm trying to say across, but
Right.
not so long that I lose you in the subject.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, because after a while it's like, okay, get to the point, my dude. Get to the
Exactly.
point. It's
Right.
like, get to the point. I'm
Right.
like that with regular question. With regular talking to my friends, they start, yo, let me tell you. And I'm like, get to the point. And they're like, oh God, I hate when you do that, Mona. I'm like, bro, I ain't got
Exactly.
time for this
Yeah.
around the store, down around the block, down the hill, through the bushes. Get
Yeah.
to the point. And my friends laugh at me because they know I can't stand, and they do it to just mess with
Right.
me. Get to
Right.
the point, man.
Yeah. My whole thing is, I try to say, I think that the main discipline in my poetry is I try to say the most amount of information in the least amount of words.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to get better with that because my poems, some of them are pretty short, but then I have one or two that are like, oh, she's going in right now, but
Yeah.
yeah. All right. Number 6. Can you share a poem that holds a special meaning for you and explain why it's significant?
Actually, it was the one I just did. That one still sticks in my head to this day, primarily
How old
because
were you when you wrote that piece?
I was older. I think I was much older. I was probably in my mid to late 20s.
You
I
remember
was
what
going through
year?
it. Oh, I know. I couldn't tell you what year it was. Yeah,
Mhm.
but I can tell you it was because that piece was about my parents. It was about them being together,
Mhm.
and the beauty of how their lives evolved together and so on. And that was the kind of relationship that I was hoping I would one day have in a marriage, so to speak. So that's
Right.
that's what I was writing that piece from. So that one still holds a very strong significance to me to this day.
Wow. Are your parents still married?
No, they are not.
Oh, okay.
No, no. 33 years I think was what it topped out at. So uh,
Wow.
yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
I know people that I have a few friends that have been married like 30 and 40 years. And I'm
Hmm.
like, I don't know how.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Right. Right.
I used to tell my aunt and my uncle. My uncle just passed away, man. I'll be pleased with him. He just
Mm.
passed away like a month ago. And every day I would always call, like before he passed away, I would always call my aunt and I would tell her, Titi,
Mm-hmm.
you're not tired of Bobby yet? Ain't you tired of him? And she would laugh. She's like, Mona, shut up. You crazy. I'm like, and then I would ask my uncle to say, I'd be like, Bobby, you ain't tired of Titi yet? He would start
Right.
laughing. Like, crazy
That's
girl.
something
You
else.
ask, it's just being funny.
Yeah.
Because that was always the end goal for me too. It didn't happen that way, but that was
Mm-hmm.
always like, okay, maybe one day, because I had that's a whole nother story. I had my whole life was planned by the time I
Okay.
was 17,
Right.
but let's get to this next question. Number 7. Mr. 7, this is a really good question for Chamber 7.
Yes.
How do you balance creativity with the structured experiences you had in the Navy?
It's night and day. It's night and
Really?
day. Oh yeah. The structure that you have in the Navy is very rigid, sometimes for all the wrong reasons. The creativity that you have gives you the opportunity to kind of take a different road, a different avenue that might not necessarily be there. Whereas in the Navy, you had to follow very certain principles and precepts all the time.
Right.
So, you know,
And how long were
yeah,
you in the service?
I spent 10 years in the Navy as a
Wow.
lieutenant. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you decided to retire. Why?
I left willfully because there were just so many changes that were happening at the time. It was right before I was supposed to be deployed, and then after a while, I made a deal with myself. I said if I stayed even a second over 10 years, I'd stay the next 10 years. But I got out at exactly 9 years and 6 months to the day. Primarily because I saw the way things were going. So I said I wanted to do more things with my work. I wanted to work as an engineer, and so that's when I came out here doing this.
Wow, that's dope. Honorable discharge?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. Just asking, because you never know.
Yeah.
That's dope.
Yeah.
Number 8, in what way do you think your poetry has evolved since your time in modeling?
I think the other influence modeling. I think my poetry kind of more influenced the way that I modeled more than modeling influenced my poetry. I feel like poetry helped to guide me in such a way that I found more creative ways that I would pose. Being a spoken word artist and being on stages helped me to be more confident in the look that I gave, the type of energy that you presented. It also helped me to, oftentimes you can look at a picture and you can see a lot of energy in a photo. I can see things in a photo that most people don't see. I can look at a couple, and even though both of them are smiling, I can tell these two people are not happy with each other at all. And I've been very clear about that. But I think that's because of the amount of sensitivity that poetry forces you to be involved in, especially as an actor too. You have to know how to be in touch with that side of yourself to not only feel things, but to see feelings on a page.
Wow.
So
How do you see that? How do you see that? I don't understand that.
It's in the simple micro expressions. If you look at a photograph, for instance, and you see that there's a couple standing there and they're both smiling, you automatically just assume that they're both happy. But if you pay attention to even closer things like the positions of their bodies, how they're faced towards each other. I did a lot of listening and studying about, small body languages. How close are their bodies to each other? Are they actually touching, or are they kind of symbolically touching just for the picture? There's a significant difference between the two. You can tell when somebody's got their body turned toward their partner, they make themselves more open to their partner. Whereas if they kind of turned away from them, or, their energy seems turned away, or if they keep a small gap between each other, all those things are small, slight micro expressions as to what's going on in that relationship.
Wow. And you see that. You could just look
Almost
at the picture.
instantly.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah, almost instantly. And it's just something like, and people be like, how did you know that? And I'll be like, I can see it in the pictures. And they're like, really? I took that picture 5 years ago. I was like, well, you probably still feel the same way.
The next question is 5 years, are they still together?
Exactly. Yeah. Sometimes no. I mean, I honestly have seen situations where I saw a picture and I was like, yeah, that ain't gonna last. And I was dead on.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I can't see
Uh,
stuff like that. Like I look at the picture like, oh, okay. Nice picture.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
But
I
I
don't
think
really take the
it's just a
time.
matter of it's the stuff that I'm looking at. I kind of it's not something that's like a superpower, so to speak. It's a skill that I kind of had to hone, So
Mm,
yes,
mhm,
I truly believe, especially creatives, it's very easy for creatives to see that kind of stuff. So
I don't know. I ain't get there yet, but we'll see. Right. All right. Number 9. How do you approach writing about personal experiences, especially those from your military service?
how do I approach
You could change that around too. How do you, how do you approach writing about your personal experiences? It doesn't, your personal experiences, maybe with a girlfriend, maybe with, you know.
I try to make it as neutral as possible. I try not to be too direct. I try not to make it too personal. And the reason I do that is because I feel like my writing is supposed to be meant to be almost like a time warp for some people to see what it's like. Like, for instance, if I'm writing a breakup piece, I
Right.
don't want it to be so specific about an ex that you can tell it's just about me and that ex. I want it to be generic enough that any guy going through a breakup that went through a similar situation
Mhm.
feels it, and it helps my piece or my poem or my experience be a lighthouse to show him the other side. Because a lot of times when I write my work, it's with the intention of writing myself out of something, out
Okay.
of pain, out of the frustration, and
Mhm.
getting it out of my system. And that way it's almost like Ghostbusters. That's the containment unit that I put that particular feeling, emotion, or pain is into the poem. And then
Wow.
when I spit it, then people know, okay, yeah, he felt that shit was personal.
Wow. You ever get
Yeah.
emotional where it makes you cry?
There have been times where I have been incredibly emotional after doing some pieces. There have been pieces that I've even retired because of it, where I
Mm,
was like, yeah, I'm not doing that piece anymore.
right.
Because it meant a lot to me, and that person who it was about meant a lot to me, and
Right.
I just kind of left it on wax and was like, look, if you want to hear that piece, you got to go there for it. So
Right.
yeah.
Wow. Do I have any pieces like that? Yeah, I do. I have one or two of when my son passed away, and
Hmm.
that I spit it once. I tried. I couldn't even get through it. I was like, nah, I can't do this piece.
Yeah.
And I probably never do that piece,
Right. Right.
but
Right.
it's written. It's somewhere in one of my books. It's written somewhere. Eventually
Yeah.
I'll get to it,
Yeah.
hopefully.
I feel that. Okay.
Mhm. So number 10, what do you see as the connection between poetry and other forms of artistic expression, such as modeling?
I personally see it not only amongst my artistic expressions, but also the creativity in the way that I solve problems. As a manufacturing engineer,
Hmm.
my job is not just to go in and solve the problem, but sometimes it's to solve the problem creatively. It's to figure out
Hmm.
a way to do it in a way that nobody else has ever thought of sometimes. So I feel like the way that I rhyme certain words, or the way that I put together a particular theme or pattern, or the way that I step on a stage when I'm either performing poetry or I'm modeling myself, all of that is how far into my imagination am I willing to go to
Hmm.
create an experience that my fans have never seen before or felt before. Or
Hmm.
maybe there's a different way that this particular, the first example that pops into my head is, I'm fairly certain that nobody ever thought that T-Pain would be able to rhyme Wisconsin. Like, there's no way in the world that Wisconsin could become Wisconsin, but that's his creativity. And we
Right.
laugh and joke about it, but he was being creative in that moment and came up with, I'm going to rhyme this with Wisconsin and go from there. So I feel like that's what I feel
Mm.
like I do every day, is
Mhm.
find a creative way to come up with a solution.
Mhm. Mhm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a poem like that with a line that I put in there. I can't even remember the whole piece, but I remember I can't remember. Anyway, but I understand exactly where you're coming from. You got to try to make you got to get creative.
Yeah. Yeah.
Got to get creative. Otherwise, it's like, all right, I'm stuck. What do I do now? I'm stuck.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
may sound stupid to you, but once you say it and you hear other people hear it, it's like, oh shit, that shit is dope. It sounds real dope, you know.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah. So now here we go. Are there any poems or writers, any poets or writers who have significantly influenced your writing style or philosophy?
Ooh, great question. There are a myriad of them. A lot of them are my like close personal friends that
Mm-hmm.
I say kind of raised me up in poetry.
Mm-hmm.
First and absolutely foremost, I have to give a shout out to Godchild the Omen out of Virginia. He is absolutely phenomenal, wonderful, extraordinary man. He just kind of raised me up with this very smooth, delicate way of showing me how to be a better poet. And between him, 13 of Nazareth really showed me a very eye-opening experience on, you know, how I needed to approach my work and to not let how other people feel about my work squelch
Mm-hmm.
how I'm supposed to display it.
Right.
Um, Shelley Says So is another beautiful, amazing, extraordinary poet that I've for a long time been a fan of.
Mm-hmm.
And her work is incredibly extraordinary. She's always pushed me to do more and say more in my work than I have previously ever done. And I can go on and on. There's a whole myriad of them, but those are like a few of the top three that I can think of right off the top of my head that have just been very influential in my work. Talam
Mm-hmm.
Acey, I've shared a
Oh,
stage with him a few times.
I love
Salam
Talam.
is unrealistically amazing.
What about
Uh,
Lamar Hill?
oh, absolutely.
Oh.
And to be honest with you, neither Talam nor Lamar Hill probably even remember me,
Mm-hmm.
but I remember actually being on stage with them in Virginia off of Bank Street numerous times. Queen Sheba, I've been
Uh-huh.
on stage with her several times. I mean, I could, like I said, I could go on and on. There's just a litany of poets that I've shared the stage with, that I've had the honor and privilege of being on stage with, that have gone on to do incredible things. So, you know, I'm very thankful for having been under their tutelage, so to speak.
Wow.
Yeah.
So did you start in New York and move to ATL, or are you from
No,
ATL? Are you from New York? Where you from?
I'm originally from Boston, but I actually started
Okay.
in Virginia. I was
Okay.
at a place called Middy's in Newport News, Rhode Island, or excuse me,
Mhm.
Newport News, Virginia. And
Right.
that's when I ended up stepping on stage for the first time. That was my first open mic. Godchild the Omen was performing. Another close friend of mine, Cece, she and I are still really, really close to this day.
Mhm.
She was another poet that was on stage that really influenced my work and helped push me to do more and write more. Clayton Singleton, who is
Mm.
an artist in so many different rights.
I don't
He
even
is
know
a
who that
painter.
is. I don't know him.
If I'll have to send it to you, but Clayton Singleton does a lot of painting
Mhm.
and a lot of poetry. And there's one piece that I did. I'll tell you how he influenced me. I asked him to do a duet with me on one of my pieces for my first album.
Mhm.
I gave him my part. He gave me his part, and I ended up rewriting my shit because I was like, "You're not finna burn me on my own album." You know what I'm saying? So I had literally to bring myself up to your level. So like
Right.
it was incredible. So yeah, it was, like I said, there's a litany of amazing dope poets. Other poets too, like Prentice Powell. Prentice Powell's incredible. I
Never
spent some
heard of
time with
them.
Prentice.
Never heard of these people.
Prentice
Mm-mm.
Powell's the one that used to do the show that was sponsored by Lexus.
Mm-mm.
The one with Omari Hardwick.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
None of them. I don't know any of these people you're talking about.
These are incredible poets that have greatly influenced my work. But like I said, these are mostly, you know, local poets that I knew directly.
Okay.
So
I see.
that have done some really big things. So
Yeah, I remember doing do you know Ainsley?
I do.
Yeah, I'll be
I
interviewing
do.
him soon too. Yeah, because he's used to do the erotic burlesque type show. He
Yeah.
does that now. Yeah, I did his last show before he switched it and changed the name to he gave it a different name and he started going out of town and
Okay.
I think he's if I'm not mistaken, I think he's still doing the burlesque erotic poetry thing. It's really dope.
Nice.
It's so dope.
Okay.
You really have to check him out because
Yeah.
he goes around the country with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's real dope. All right, number 12. How do you think your diverse experiences contribute to your unique voice in poetry?
Oh, great question. Often been hailed the jack of all trades. I
Hmm.
try to speak from several different facets. I use my voice in whatever way I can. So I not only speak as an officer in the military, I can speak from being a father. I can speak from being a husband. I can speak from being an ex-husband. I can speak from being a boyfriend, an ex-boyfriend. Like I
Hmm.
have so many different facets of who I am or who I've been in my life. And I have so many experiences that I kind of funnel all that into my poetry so that I can speak to all of those individuals who also have shared
Woo.
those titles at some point,
Wow.
you know. And I
Wow.
and I feel like that's a necessity. Is I don't feel like people speak enough about how they truly feel, especially in the male space. I
Mm-hmm.
recognize that nowadays there's this philosophy where it's almost a gender war between men and women, and I get frustrated with it because I'm like, we don't necessarily need to fight with each other, but we do need to help understand each other, and there
Right.
needs to be a better communication between
Exactly.
us.
Yes.
And I don't think it's there. I think there's too much trauma bonding where people just want to say, well, my trauma is worse than yours. So, what do you have to say? And I'm like, why does one person's trauma have to be worse than the other person's trauma? Why can't we just share our stories and be empathetic to what the other person's got going on?
Right.
The leading cause of death for most men is either heart disease or suicide. And it's been exponential, especially among Black men. So
Mm-hmm.
I make every effort to speak on every facet of my experiences in hopes that I can throw a lifeline to somebody, anybody, young
Yes.
men, old men, anybody who has been suffering in silence, and to women as well that might hear something that I said, because my work isn't meant to be just for men, but it's supposed to be at least gender neutral enough that any experience that you can connect to that will save you, then please feel free.
Yes. Communication is so, it's, a lot of times we feel like if we speak how we feel, we're a sucker. You're a sucker
Hmm.
because you're talking about you're sharing your feelings, and you
Yeah.
ain't supposed to act. You ain't supposed to say that. You're not
Yeah.
supposed to do that. Men
Yeah.
and women, men
Yeah.
and women, men especially, because the men, you're supposed to be the man. You ain't supposed to.
Yeah.
Men ain't supposed to cry. Men ain't
Right.
supposed to share their feelings. Oh, you're a pussy if you do this, and you're a pussy if
Right.
you know what I'm saying. So
Exactly.
yeah, it's
Exactly.
so, Black men get it so hard. They get it because they're so used to not expressing themselves that, yeah, exactly. They wind up killing themselves. They wind up
Right.
crazy. They wind up alcoholics. And,
Right. Right.
because women aren't giving them, and I'm speaking as far as, what I
Yeah.
see,
Yeah.
women are so used to, we all expect the men to be this way and that way. Yeah. So
Hmm.
it's rough. And we need to become more aware of each other, like you said before.
Hmm.
Become more aware of each other, and we should begin to speak to each other and listen. Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
makes sense. That makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
totally agree with that.
Yeah. Because I mean, it's hard. Sometimes it's hard for even me to say how I really feel. But I'm like, man, if I don't say it, it ain't gonna get said. Let me say what I got to
Like
say,
you
no
said.
matter what, whatever
Right.
whatever, however, whoever I'm speaking with, my
Exactly.
homegirl or my ex boyfriend or my boyfriend. I don't have a boyfriend, but if I did, I try to do
Hmm.
something different than the last relationship.
Yeah.
And
How
before
do
I
I
get
grow?
in, right, you got to grow. And then before I get into the new relationship,
Hmm.
I take a lot of time off to get to
Hmm.
know me and to kind of regroup and kind of reevaluate the last relationship and what I did wrong and what could be done different and how can this work next time. And I don't know if that
Absolutely.
makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense. Yeah, therapy works. I
No,
heard
absolutely.
therapy works.
Abs-
So, it makes a
Absolutely.
lot of sense. Yeah. I wish, I just really hope that we as Black people can get it together.
I hope so.
I hope so too. Something
I
got to
really
change.
do.
Something got to
Yeah.
change, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, number 13. I'm sorry I ramble sometimes. You got to excuse
No,
me.
that's all right. That's perfectly fine. That's how we connect, right?
That's
You know?
right. Number 13. What challenges? I can't see. I don't have my glasses on. What challenges do you face as a poet and how do you overcome them?
Biggest challenge I probably face is the challenge of judgment, even
Okay.
self-inflicted.
Okay.
There are times when I feel like there's a subject matter that maybe I don't want to touch on,
Hmm.
and I ask myself the question, why? Like maybe this is a pertinent piece of subject that needs to be expressed. Why would I falter on it? And then I dig a little deeper. I do a lot of self-examination.
Hmm.
Sometimes people would say, well, you seem to close yourself off a lot. And I like, sometimes that's the only way I can protect my peace. There
Mm.
are times when my self-isolation has been with the specific intention of protecting those around me.
Uh-huh.
I know more of my nature because I've spent a tremendous amount of time in self-evaluation. I am, contrary to popular belief for some people, they say, oh, people don't take accountability. I want to take accountability because
Right.
that's the only appropriate way that I can evolve. There's no
Yes.
way for me to evolve as a human being, both mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, if I have no idea where I am. I cannot possibly evolve without knowing where I am. And a lot of times people aren't evolving because they want to pretend where they are, so to speak.
Uh,
Like they want to pretend, oh, I know I'm here, but you're not there. And that's why you're building your foundation in the wrong place, because you have a delusion as to where your starting point is.
mm-hmm.
So you're nowhere near where your finish line can be because you're not even close to where you're supposed to be to get there. Your directions are all off. So
Right.
I take a lot of time as a poet to uh, reevaluate, do a self-assessment over and over and over again. Like, what kind of person am I? What kind of person do I want to be? What kind of person does X, Y, and Z, so on and so forth. So, and then I
Mm-hmm.
truly dig deep into that, and I'm not afraid to deal with those demons by myself.
Right. And sometimes, the question when you first meet a person, what do you look for in a person? Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
asking you. Let's say I ask you, what are you looking for in a woman? The
Mm-hmm.
wrong answer. I heard this the other day. Somebody, I think I either heard it somewhere, I was talking to somebody, or I read it somewhere. I don't remember. The person said, I don't ask that. I don't, what I say is, I want to know, I forgot how she said it. She said it when they asked me what am I looking for in a guy, I don't answer that question of what I want, because then that person will become what I said I would like. So they start to live a false narrative, if you understand what I'm saying with that.
I know exactly what you're saying, and I've actually dealt with that before. And in my
Mhm.
opinion, so in other words, you're just manipulating the situation to get the information out of them. Because my
Not only
thought,
that, then you become the person that they become the person that you want them to be, and it's all a facade. And then
right?
one day that you wake up and they really see who they are, and it's like, oh, you're not the person that you know.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. But
Yes. So.
so in my opinion, I'll be honest with you, I've been through so many weird situations in my life. I promise
Mhm.
you, if I wasn't involved in the situation, I wouldn't even
Mhm.
believe they happened. But
Right.
my attitude is I prefer to be as upfront and humanly possible. And yeah, you can wear a facade, but much like I can do with a picture, I can do with a person. There
Mm.
have been times I've been fooled, and that's fine. I learned my lesson. But
Right.
in that I take the moment of time that things were beautiful and that you wore the mask, that's
Mhm.
fine. Hey, great. I'm glad we had a good run, and then we move on.
Right.
But at some point, I need to be aware of those imposters, if you will. If this is
Mm.
truly what I want, I should be able to tell the difference between somebody who's pretending to like my poetry and
Right.
somebody who actually likes my poetry.
Right.
Like a perfect example. I've dated women who said, "Oh yeah, I love your poetry," and then 6 months in, you can't tell me a single poem that I've ever written or
Mhm.
know a single line. You know nothing of my work at all. But if you truly want to get to know me, Sean Singletary, Chamber 7, you will
Mhm.
have listened to everything I've ever put out, because that
Right.
will give you more information about me than I could ever possibly lie to you about,
Mhm.
you know?
Mhm.
So,
Wow. Yeah, that makes sense. Right. If you really like me, listen to my stuff.
yeah.
If
And
you
that's
really
what
like
anything.
what I'm spitting.
Yeah. And that's what anything. Like, if you're involved with somebody, you should, you might not necessarily like Star Wars, but if your partner enjoys Star Wars, then you should probably know a little something about Star Wars just to catch the references. You make
Ah,
those kind of sacrifices and inferences with the intention of better understanding your partner. There's a particular reason that they like this thing.
mhm.
And maybe it never intrigued you before, but if you like this person, how do you know there isn't something in that hobby or movie or whatever it is that they like that seems quirky that you might see and go, oh, this is what you like about it?
Right.
You never
Makes
know.
sense. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's probably why, because I know a lot of people, I've dated, I don't date anymore, but I dated years ago. And it's like, you like poetry? I'm like, yeah, I like
Yeah.
poetry. I'm a poet.
Yeah.
You should come to
Yeah.
one of my shows. Nah, that's not what I like. Okay, so you really ain't feeling me like that. You just,
Right.
you really ain't
Or they
feeling
have a misconception as to what it's supposed to be.
right. Right.
Right.
And then you just move on, keep it moving. Find
That's
somebody
why I
that's in
believe in being very open about it. You're like, look, this is me. If you like it,
right.
cool. If you don't, cool.
It was
I'm not
nice
wasting my
knowing you.
time.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Too old for that, man. I'm almost
Way
60.
too old.
Too old for that. We too old for that
I
stuff.
hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you.
Next question. What advice would you give to inspiring poets, especially those with unconventional backgrounds?
Right. Read, write, learn, be curious, and write
Mm-hmm.
some more. Don't let anything restrict what it is that you want to say.
Right.
Be as forthcoming about your work as you want, and then step on stage and perform. Like I never set out to be an erotic poet. I never set out to be a conscious poet. I just set out to be a poet that just wrote, and then whatever the crowd liked, that's what I gave them sometimes. And sometimes I gave them stuff that they didn't like. But how am I
Mm-hmm.
supposed to know what genre I'm supposed to quote unquote be a part of unless I expressed it? So I always say to people, if you have a work, just write it. And sometimes it's not going to be great. Like I said, some of my first pieces weren't exactly awesome and amazing, but I just kept at it. And then I found my voice. But the only way you can find your voice,
Mm-hmm.
like for instance, in that previous question, when you mentioned, oh, well, the person could put on a facade, but that
Right.
facade only lasts for so long.
Right.
So the more that you write, you flush out all of the other voices that have influenced your work so much that your own voice doesn't come out. So I would tell aspiring poets, you got to keep writing until you flush out where your voice is. And now that I have my
Right.
own rhythm, my own voice, that's what comes out.
Right.
I'll be in the middle of a text message and it'll come out. I'll be in the middle of a conversation and it'll come out because
There's
that's me.
poets today, they all sound the same. Have you seen that they have that same singing type of rhyme, that singing type of poetry, if you know what I'm
That's the
talking about?
popularity. Yeah, that's the popularity. That's what everybody's gaming
Yeah.
for. The TikTok, I need to go viral. Look, just write, just be yourself. Sometimes my
Right.
work isn't, amazing in that regard, but
Right.
my alliteration can be amazing and catch
Mhm.
somebody off guard.
Right.
It has a different purpose than to just be popular.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of
You
my
know,
poetry, even to date, some of my poetry, I'm like, oh, that shit was whack. That was kind of whack. That really wasn't a good poem, but I do try to work it out, work through the poem.
yeah,
I'm not perfect. I'm not human,
right,
only human. And
right. We all do something different. Yeah,
some of my poems, they'll look at me like, huh. And then I'll laugh and be like, you know what? Let me do another piece. Let's
yeah,
switch this
yeah.
up a little bit, try
Let's
to make
switch
it
this up.
funny. Right. Because
Yeah,
I like
yeah,
to laugh. I like to make people laugh. So
yeah.
a lot of my poetry, a lot of my erotic poetry is funny.
Hmm.
It has funny scenarios in them because I
Yeah,
want to make people laugh,
yeah.
So here we go. Number 15. How do you engage with your audience when you perform your poetry?
I usually put things in the poem that are very striking.
Mhm.
I will even add things like things in the poem that don't make it feel like a performance. I literally want you to feel like it's just me and you having a conversation, and it
Mhm.
just happens that the dialogue rhymes. So
Right.
that's what I prefer. I prefer for it to, reach in and it's just me and you sitting down having a face-to-face conversation at brunch. more so than I'm standing on a stage and I'm doing Shakespeare for you. I don't want it to be so performative that it makes you feel alienated. I want you to feel like it's me and you sitting
Mm-hmm.
across from each other at the table. And that's what I
Mm-hmm.
think makes this sincere difference. That's how I engage the audience, is by
Wow.
asking very poignant questions and by breaking it down in such a way that it feels very direct.
Right. Huh. Do you know Nathan P.
I do.
from Harlem?
Yeah.
You talk about the one-on-one. One day we're sitting down and he starts spitting the ABCs erotically.
Mm.
Have you ever heard that piece? Him do that piece? I have it somewhere. Somebody
I
recorded
don't
it.
believe I heard that one. No,
Oh
no.
my God, he spit the ABCs so erotic. I mean, and all he was saying was A, B, C,
Yep.
D.
And it's just the way he did it.
It's the way he did the poem. Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
that one-on-one thing that you said, yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, I love poetry. I love poetry.
Same. Yep.
I don't write like I used to, but it's in me. It's part of me. It's part of you and it's part of me. It's dope.
I tell people all the time I'm constantly writing, and some of the pieces that I write aren't even actually pieces. They're just fragments of thought, you know?
Right. Me too.
But I still continue to write. Like I have a work notebook that I keep all my notes in.
Mhm.
And in the back of that book, there's always fragments of poetry that come out of it. And sometimes it develops into a piece and other times it doesn't.
Mhm. Are you still performing?
Not as much as I used to. Every once in a while, a friend will ask me to perform for like an event or something like that, but I don't actively go out searching for performances as much anymore.
Right.
Just because a lot of times, the scene is different. I'll put it that way.
I definitely 110% agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I put in the work of, going through and rehearsing and rehearsing a line and getting it down right and then down pat and everything.
Mhm.
And now with the 9 to 5 and everything else and responsibilities, it's just like,
Yes.
why am I hate to say wasting my time of doing all that work to get up on somebody's stage for 3 to 5 minutes and not get
Right.
paid for it or not to be acknowledged for it appropriately. I'll say that because it's not about the pay for us. It's more about the acknowledgement of your work. And it just, sometimes it stings and it kind of hits your ego a little hard. So, I've released albums. I performed across the country from California to Virginia. I feel like I no longer have anything to prove, so to speak.
Yes.
So, but it's still a part of me and I still release it. So most of my work is now just going on TikTok, SoundCloud, YouTube, and that's about it. So,
Send
and
me
if
those
somebody wants me,
links.
oh,
Send me
absolutely.
those links
I
whenever
sure
you
can.
put something up. Send them to me so I can listen to it.
I sure can. Absolutely.
Yeah. And the last question, I don't know, it's part of the previous question. What future projects or themes are you excited to explore? Wait a minute, let me read this again. What future projects or themes are you excited to explore in your writing?
So I have, I'm also an avid film maker and actor. So I've been involved in film several times. So lately, what I've wanted to do is expand my work into Prince EU. Also did. He would normally do he would do poetry, and then he would like set it to some type of film background where he has actors act out some of the stuff. So I'm considering doing some more of that. I haven't done much of it, so I would like to. My brother and I up in his name's Truth the Poet. He's up in Michigan. He had a piece and he and I collaborated on it. We worked on called The Session, where it was just two men. One man is the therapist and the other one is talking to him about, his experience in a relationship. And it's a dope piece. So now I just want to add some visuals to it. Some actual, like, really clear, crystal clear visuals that'll go very nicely with it. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I would love to. Exactly. And that's what I want to do. I would love to see something like more music video style expressions of poetry. I wish there was a channel like that that just showed all of our work and that it was treated with that reverence, kind of like Def Poetry Jam back in the day. A lot of people don't realize that or
I remember
the way we used to, pass the word orally was significant in history. and we still do it to this day. Like what we do as poets is the foundation of pretty much every other form of media. TikTok and all this other stuff is built off of what we've done as poets over all these years. So it would be nice if we could go back to that. I wish we could, instead of it being bastardized. That would be fantastic. I would love to see that.
I wish
just treat it with true.
I really wish we could go back to the 90s and
early
2000s and have that deaf poetry, because there was a camaraderie back then.
Oh yeah.
You know, and a lot of the poets that we know have all passed away.
Yeah.
You know,
and don't get me wrong, there's some decent up and comers there. I've ran across some dudes in some of these poetry sectors. Shout out to the Honey Drippers. Shout out to all the groups that have put together. ES has come together and brought a lot of erotic poets together on the East Coast, and they kind of bigged up those things. Verses and Flow did it for a little bit, and then unfortunately we don't see as much of that anymore, but I just wish there were more shows like that. You know what I'm saying? I miss those things. Busboys and Poets, and I could go on and on about some of the great and amazing shows that have been out there, or the places that you need to go to as a true spoken word artist on the grind up and down the country. But I just wish there was more of it.
Yeah, I definitely agree, because it's nowhere to go. I mean, I'm in New York, and there aren't a lot of places to go for poetry anymore.
Nope. Nope. They don't treat it the same. They just don't.
Not at all.
It's not treated with the same level of reverence that it should, because I tell you now, there are just so many extraordinary poets that you don't see them. You just don't. And it's sad. It's very sad.
Well, where can the people find you?
Like I said, you can find me on Instagram under Chamber 7. Same thing on SoundCloud, Chamber 7. I try to keep it the same. It's either Chamber 7, CHAMBER, and the number 7, or you can find. I try to abbreviate it because sometimes there's also a band called Chamber 7 from back in the day. So I spell it CH. I saw
that online. I saw that online somewhere.
Yeah. There's another way. I usually spell it CHMBR. SE the number 7 EN, and you can find me either on SoundCloud, where else? YouTube, TikTok. You can find me in a lot of those places. So
send me a couple of those links, and I'm gonna add it to this.
I sure can. Absolutely.
I'll add it to this when airs.
I sure can.
Yeah. So now here we go. I'd like to hear some erotic poetry from you.
Yeah, so I was thinking,
doesn't have to be long, just a few lines.
Just a few lines. Okay, because I was thinking about it, and I was thinking to myself, I'm gonna see if I can do this while I still got you on here.
Do it. I want to hear it. What happened to you? Where are you?
I'm right here. There we go.
There you go.
So what I'm gonna do is, there it is. That's what I'm looking for. All right, so good. You can still see me. So
yeah.
I have a couple pieces and some of these are like really, really new that I just haven't released. So how erotic are we talking?
Spit it. I want to hear it. However erotic you want to go. This is the show, my show. I want to hear it all.
Oh, okay. All right, so all right.
Let's go.
Whose pussy is this? With cream so rich, hidden between thighs so thick that stand guard against those who don't meet the appropriate measure of standard, until activated by the intelligent words of this man of valor. For the walls of this pussy shan't be taken by force, but by the power of proper persuasion from tongue that ravishes clitoris as main course, a deranged sort. The language spoken between our bodies is foreign to the common. You will moan and mumble whispered screams as if speaking to a shaman, and that's long before I enter in. With long stroke preempted by pad and pen, slow purposeful thrusting carves hieroglyphic memories of this glorious agony into the folds of your skin, to serve as a seductive warning before you dare to form the words to ask again. That pussy right there, is mine without question. Chamber 7.
So wonderful. I love it. You are nasty.
I always like to ask before I jump out there with something that, aggressive. You know what I'm saying?
You are nasty.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's dope.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Appreciate that.
I like that. So now I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and sitting with me and talking with me, and I get to know you a little bit more, and you've gotten to know me a little bit more. So
Absolutely.
Now we are friends. We cool.
Yes.
We friends now.
And the funny thing is, I've long been a fan of yours for years, but we never actually talked. Oh yeah, we've known each other for. I have known of you for many years.
Wow.
You're absolutely.
The second person to say that to me. You're the second.
Oh
person that said, and I'm like, me.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, no, your name has gotten around. We've been Facebook friends for the longest time, and I've long been a fan of yours. So just imagine my surprise when I got that note in the inbox that like, yo, you want to get interviewed? I was like, who, me? I was like, all right, yeah, absolutely. I feel blessed to still be relevant enough to want to get interviewed by, so that's dope.
I really appreciate that. That's
I mean that.
Because every time I'm ready and to throw in a towel and say, you know what, I'm done. I can't do this no more. Somebody says, yo, you are so dope. I remember you from when? And I'm like, me?
Yeah.
Me? Yeah, man. I remember. You don't remember me, but I remember.
I remember you.
I remember when you did this piece. I remember when you came out here and did this and did that. And I'm like, God damn, people are really paying attention.
Right. And that's the reason why I say sometimes it's not about the quantity of people that have to hear me, but the quality of the work that I produce that gets the attention of the right person at the right time. I've had couples stop me and say, yo, your piece helped save our marriage. And I was like, are you kidding me?
Wow.
But it means a lot, so I keep doing it.
Chamber 7, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You really made my day.
I appreciate that. I'm glad.
So at the end of this show, I want you to hang out. Let me end this show, and we're gonna talk a few more minutes, okay?
All right, no worries.
All right, cool. So thank you again, babe. It's been dope, very dope. And you're very
absolutely
dope. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, y'all, that's the end of the show. I want to thank everybody for listening. You know how we do every Monday night, 7 p.m. So I want to say this again. Uptown with Mona every Monday at 7 p.m. and every Thursday at 6 p.m. on withoutwarningradio.com. Facebook, uptown.with.mona. Please join that page. That page is suffering from it's very quiet. That page is too quiet. So I need everybody to join that page. And if you're interested, if you have an interesting story or you really want to be interviewed, hit me up, uptownwithmona@gmail.com. And don't forget, December 16th, 2024 at Comedy in Harlem on 147th Street in St. Nicholas Avenue, the Naughty List, the Mocha Lounge reunion. It's going down. We're doing erotic poetry, all erotic poetry. We got games. We have an adult Q&A. It's going to be a great event. So you got to come out. So again, I want to thank you all for coming out, and I will holler at y'all later. Peace and hair grease, y'all. And that's a wrap for today's show, y'all. Thanks again for tuning in to Uptown with Mona. Be sure to join us again next week for another exciting episode. Until then, I'm your host, Mona Bodé, and I'm saying peace and love. Have a wonderful day.